Welcome to Chicks Who Fly, a podcast dedicated to women pilots and women in aviation. My name is Anaya, and I am your host. I am a vocalist, a DJ, and a producer, and I'm also a student pilot. I am currently working on my private pilot certificate, and while I am getting some finances in place to finish my training, I have decided to stay active in the aviation community by starting this podcast, among other things. I plan to interview and feature different women pilots and women in aviation and bring those interviews to you. And hopefully you guys enjoy the interviews as much as I enjoy spending time with these amazing ladies. In this 10th episode of Chicks Who Fly, I get to have a conversation with Emmy Award-winning journalist, KTLA reporter, and private pilot Christina Pascucci. We talk about how she learned to fly in order to overcome her paralyzing fear of flying in small planes. We talk about how she learned to fly in Palm Springs and documented her flight training, including her first solo, for a TV show. We talk about the news story Christina got to do where she was able to grant the wish of a 99-year-old WASP who wanted to fly once more. We talk about dealing with self-doubt, the time that Christina lost comms in her aircraft during a flight, and about the power that comes with taking on challenges in the service of something bigger than just yourself. How Christina is inspired by the idea of empowering women to face their fears and challenges head on, flying to OshKosh, how aviation can serve the community, and the confidence that comes with flight training and getting your pilot certificate, among other things. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider following us on Spotify and subscribing on YouTube. It really helps us get the podcast out to more and more people. If you'd really like to be a more intimate part of the whole process of creating this podcast, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon, where our page is called Chicks Who Fly. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can do that at chickswhoflyofficial@gmail.com. And please also feel free to visit our website and connect with us there at chickswhofly.com. So without further ado, please enjoy the conversation that I got to have with Christina Pascucci. Hi, Christina. Welcome to Chicks Who Fly. I'm incredibly pumped to have you on. How is it going?
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm so excited, and I love and appreciate all my fellow female pilots, so I'm excited to chat with you.
Yay! And I'm sure they're all going to enjoy this conversation as well. So I think we're going to start at the very beginning, as we always do. What got you into aviation?
Well, when I was in my early to mid-20s, I had this paralyzing fear of small planes and heights. And so, I don't know, I just liked the challenge, I think, and I wanted to see what would happen if I became a pilot. I was like, what's the best way to tackle this head on? And it was, flying over and over again. And so I started doing it, not knowing how far I'd go, but at least wanting to solo. And then I fell in love with it.
That's amazing. It sounds like something I would do, just face it head on. How old were you when you started taking lessons?
I was about 24, 25. I was living in Palm Springs at the time. And also, I was single, and this guy who I met, he was like, oh, come up with a flight with me to Big Bear. And I also thought that was so cool to have that freedom where you could just go somewhere for lunch, at the blink of an eye like that.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. My unofficial discovery flight was going to lunch in Santa Barbara from Santa Monica. So,
oh, cool. Yeah, and that's such a beautiful flight, too.
it really was right up the coast on PCH, and it was spectacular, and I was totally hooked. What ratings do you currently have?
I just have my private. I shouldn't say just have. I should, own it. I have my private certificate. I really want to get my instrument rating.
Are you working on it?
Not yet. So I just got engaged earlier this year, a month ago or something. And
congratulations.
we are wedding planning. Thank you. We're in the midst of wedding planning and looking for a home. And so all my finances are kind of flowing in toward those things now. But I will. Undoubtedly I will, because I think it makes you a much safer and better pilot.
Yeah, I agree. While I'm trying to get all my financial ducks in a row to go ahead and finish, I'm thinking of signing back up for the online ground school that helped me pass my private pilot knowledge exam and actually taking the written for instrument and commercial before I even have my private.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, you should. I think it's always so important and a great idea to brush up on those skills, too. And to, even if you're not looking to get your next rating, just to keep reminding yourself of all the ground stuff that we learned early on to make sure you don't forget or become complacent.
Totally. You have to keep it fresh. So you were living in Palm Springs, and were you working? What were you doing?
Yes, I know. It was kind of random. So I'm from LA, and then I'm a broadcaster. So in order to move the way up the chain, the way you typically do it is you move to smaller towns. So I first moved to Reno, Nevada, and was there for 9 months at an ABC affiliate. And then I got the job in Palm Springs, which is actually a smaller market than Reno, but it was closer to home, and it was an anchor job as opposed to a reporting job. So then I went there and was there for a couple years.
Awesome, which is what you're doing now, KTLA in LA, correct?
Yes.
Amazing. I've seen some of your stories, and especially that one of remind me who it was, the older pilot. Yes.
Yeah. I think you're thinking of Beverly Beastmeyer. That's actually one of my favorite stories of all time. She was 99 when I met her, and she was, WASP is Women Air Force Service pilot. She was one of the first female aviators in the military, and when I met her, she was getting older. I wasn't allowed to share this in my story because of, health protection laws, but she was on hospice, and her days were numbered, and her dying wish was to get back up in the air and fly again. And her family was, trusted me. I'm so grateful for that with making that happen. And so I took her up for her final flight. And it was such a powerful story, full circle to be able to fly with this woman who really paved the way for me to be flying, and also who served our country in such a powerful way, because WASPs weren't even recognized as veterans until more recently.
Yeah, I have goosebumps, but I saw the story. It's beautiful. I'm totally going to put it in the show notes as a link so people can see it, because I thought it was really moving and amazing. You were awesome.
Appreciate it.
So you're in Palm Springs, you're working, you decide to face your fear head on. How did you actually start flying and go through your training?
So, it was interesting the way that I did it. I'm happy I did it that way because I held myself accountable. I turned it into a TV series that we aired on the NBC affiliate I was working for, and we called it On Air and In the Air with Christina Pascucci. And every week we'd take people to another part of my flight training, and then we'd also give a free flight away, a free flight training flight for people who wanted to learn to fly. And so it was kind of like, I can't screw this up. I can't not do this, because if I do, I'm letting our viewers down. And that was what I thought of when I first flew solo. And it's really cool to, I have the video of my first solo flight and my expression on my face, and I'm like, holy crap, what am I doing? I feel like so many pilots probably feel in that first moment. It was pretty cool.
No pressure. The whole world's watching you do your first solo.
Yeah. Don't screw it up. I know. Yeah, it was a lot. And I just remember pulling the yoke back and the wheels leaving the ground and it just being this moment of complete surrealness, if that's even a word. It was just so surreal and trippy, and I was like, whoa, I can actually do this.
I haven't gotten there yet, but I feel like I'm totally living through it with you. And plus, you were flying, I believe, at the school that I'm flying at now, which is Desert West Aviation in Bermuda Dunes.
Oh, yeah, you're flying with them?
I am. I love David, and I'm flying with John. I don't know who your instructor was, but my instructor is John.
Okay, I love David so much at Desert West Aviation. He is amazing, and I really am so grateful to him for being willing to do that project with me, too, because if it weren't for him, I probably wouldn't be a pilot now. And I had Captain Doug, I called him. His name was Doug. I don't know if he's still there.
I haven't met him, but I'll ask David, and that's pretty cool. I actually I'm going to start working at the Bermuda Dunes Airport, because I moved to Palm Springs. I don't know if I told you that.
No, I had no idea. Where in Palm Springs are you living?
I'm actually living in Palm Desert.
Okay, great.
And the reason I came out here is because I could still do a lot of my music gigs in LA, which is how I pay my bills, but having Palm Desert cost of living, which is literally a fraction.
Yeah, and you know what? The market there is growing so much, it's just exploding. So I think you're getting in there at the right time, too. And it's such a fun place to live. So many people are moving there now.
Agreed, and it's gorgeous, which doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and nice weather year-round, unless you get those crazy monsoonal storms.
It's so weird that we get a lot of rain in the desert.
I know. Who knew? And then when those winds whip up, I remember I would see some of our reporters out there when the winds would get really intense, and it almost would pick them right up.
So what time of year was it when you started flying?
That's a good question. You know, because it's always sunny there, essentially, I don't even know, but I do remember feeling the thermals that really made it an extra bumpy ride. So I think it was summer, because I remember it being really hot and Captain saying, don't worry, it's just the thermals. And then we'd drop 50 feet and he'd be like, don't worry. Like, I did this.
I went flying here in the summer and there was nobody there. And on top of it, because I started flying in Santa Monica and Van Nuys and El Monte and North Las Vegas. Forget it. I've flown in a lot of places trying to find my groove. But over here, it was my first time flying in an uncontrolled airport. And it was so hot and there was like nobody up there. It was just like me and John flying around, self-announcing out into the universe.
Cool, isn't it?
Yes. And we discovered, being new in town, my husband was back in the back seat of the plane on my first lesson here. We were discovering the Salton Sea and all sorts of beautiful spots that we were marking so that we could later drive to and check out. So,
awesome. What got you into flying?
What got me into flying? I spent my whole life singing and going to perform in 5-star hotels, mostly in Asia and a little bit in South America and Europe. And the short story is the market changed a lot and it's not really working so much anymore for me. And I always loved flying. And when I was a little girl, I said I wanted to be a flight attendant because, it was the 70s and I had never seen a woman pilot. And when I was trying to get out of my gigs and find what I wanted to do next, I started driving for Lyft in Los Angeles. And I had a couple of pilots in my car. And it just opened my mind to the fact that it was a real possibility for me.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So when you started training, was there any particular moment that stands out as, like an amazing high that you had during your training, like a big win, a big breakthrough?
Honestly, I think when I passed the check ride was when, because as women, we overthink and we doubt ourselves a lot more than men tend to, for whatever reason. At least that's been my experience, especially in this flight training process when I'm talking to male instructors or other pilots who are male. And I think I doubted myself all the way through up until the point of the check ride. You know, can I do this? Am I good enough? Am I going to be able to do that steep turn just on point the way that they're going to want it? If I have to go around and abort a landing, am I going to be able to do it? And actually, that was what saved me on my check ride, was that I was coming in for landing and I was just a little bit too far and it wasn't quite as stable as I liked. And so I just decided, you know what, I'm going to go around. And I did. And when we landed, he said, had you not done that, you would have failed. So I was like, oh, crap. Thank God I did it. And, you know, I think actually I had good people training me, too, because they said that. They said, there's no shame in doing a go-around if your landing isn't going to be on point.
Yeah, it's good advice, and that's amazing. And I'm totally excited to hear all of this. And is there a moment in your training, something that was a particular challenge and or a moment that you kind of scared yourself during your training?
There was one time where the radios weren't working, and you realize in that moment how key communication is, and all of a sudden you feel, you know, all of these thoughts and everything happen within a split second or maybe 2 seconds, where you're thinking like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to die. Or like whatever. You think of all the negative thoughts you can, and then you're like, wait a minute. No, I learned exactly what to do in this scenario. And you go through your checklist in your mind. And then I actually was able to get the radios back working. But, you know, if you aren't able to, you know, tell your plane a certain way or to dial in a certain way that your comms aren't working, and then it's fine. As long as you prepare for the worst and hope for the best, you're always good to go.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Was your family supportive when you were telling them that you decided to learn to fly a plane?
Not really, to be honest. They still don't love it. They get nervous about small planes, and I try to explain to them that aviation is the safest form of transportation, much safer than driving, especially in Los Angeles. And unfortunately, the media, they always want to talk about the plane crashes and sensationalize them. And, you know, a lot of the reporters don't really understand the way the aerodynamics work. And so it just sounds kind of sensationalized. And I try to reassure my family that it is safe and I am preparing. And I always double and triple check because I want to be as safe as possible. And when I haven't flown, I usually try to not let, more than 2 to 3 weeks go by between flying, because then I feel rusty and I don't like feeling rusty in the air. So if I let more than, say, a month to 6 weeks go by, then I'll just jump in with a fellow pilot in my first flight after, just to make sure that I'm feeling good and I'm feeling completely comfortable with everything, and my navigation and my emergency procedures and all of that. So I think it's really important to be a prudent pilot. But they support me. Once I got my license, they were proud of me and happy for me. I think it just made them nervous along the way. Because what you don't understand makes you nervous, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Is your family in Los Angeles now still?
Am I living in Los Angeles? Yeah, I'm living on the west side.
Well, actually, I asked if your family is still there.
Oh, sorry. Yes, they are. They are still here. So I get to see him a lot, too. And I'm curious with your husband, is he supportive?
Honestly, it was his idea.
Oh, yes! I love it! How did that come about?
He's really awesome. I mean, I mentioned to him how much I had loved it. Basically, my grandmother was born in 1927, and she was more like a mom to me than she was a grandmother. She was the closest person in the world to me, and she had a huge love of flying and traveling and education. And it was so deeply ingrained. Like when I was a little kid, I used to fly by myself when I was 5 because my parents were divorced and I was flying, they just put you on a plane and a flight attendant would take you to your seat and, kind of watch over you the whole time and then walk you to whatever guardian was picking you up. And I've just always been really comfortable on airplanes and loved the view. And I don't know, my grandmother has passed away now. She passed away in 2000, but I think that if she were alive today, she would be the one person who would think that this is the coolest thing ever that I'm doing this.
Oh, that's so special.
It is. In a way, I'm kind of doing this a lot for her.
And that's always, I think, a big thing is when you're doing something for something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. Yes. What's your why?
Well, I think, just showing that women can do it. And there's such a small percentage of pilots that are women. And whenever I have self-doubt or think about, whether or not I can continue on or anything like that, I always think, well, this is about women. This isn't even about me. It's about, showing young girls what is possible and showing them that they can do anything. And it's not a man or woman role. It's just like a human. It's the human. Whatever you believe you can do, you can.
I really relate to that. And even as a little girl, I kind of feel like I came into the world with that mission already. When I was little, the first time that I was able to choose what I wanted to be for Halloween, I chose Mighty Mouse.
Cool.
And the next year I chose Princess Leia, and the next year I chose Wonder Woman, who had an invisible plane.
Oh my gosh, so it got better and better. Then you embraced that woman warrior.
And then when I was in the second grade, I found a T-shirt that I used to wear to school, and it used to cause all these arguments between the entire class. My T-shirt said, "Anything boys can do, girls can do better."
Yes. Oh my gosh. I remember there was this kind of trend to wear patches on jeans when I was in maybe middle school. And I think there were some I don't know. I remember one that was really popular, boys are stupid, throw rocks at them or something. And I don't think that's what we should be teaching our kids either, but it is kind of funny looking back, how you learn about this male-female dynamic early on and what it looks like. Or, I feel like more than ever, as women are feeling more empowered and following the Me Too movement, there should be a call to action for, it's not like an anti-man movement, it's a men and women working together movement. And I think that's important to stress to girls too, is that men are great, especially the ones that empower us to be our best.
Correct. I got lucky that I found one that's like that, so.
Yeah, hence why you married him.
This is a good point. I would not have put up with anything else, with anything less.
Yeah.
So once you started to fly, how long did it take you to get to your check ride?
So I did my solo. I think my solo was after a couple months. I honestly don't remember. I should go back in my logbook and look. And then when I left Palm Springs, I had another job. I got the job in LA. And so I saved up my money again. And honestly, it was a couple years later that I got back into it. So it wasn't right away. After that first solo, I took a big hiatus to get money and to save up for it. And then once I started training again, it took me about 5 months to do my check ride and pass.
How often were you flying at that point?
Initially, I was flying, I'd say weekly, and then toward the end, I really wanted to ramp it up, and so I went up 2 to 3 times a week.
Cool. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to be able to do soon.
I just feel like you have to find what works for you. Everyone's different, and for me, it took just making that check ride date and setting it and being like, okay, I have no option but to succeed here, and I better do what it takes to make it to the point I need to be at to have a successful check ride. And so putting that deadline pressure on me really helped.
Yeah. You know what? I can relate once again, because that's how I took my written exam. I was like, yeah. And then I called, I set the date, I paid for the exam, and then somehow I was ready. You know what I mean? You have no choice. You just go hard, and then I actually did okay. Like I got an 86 on my written exam.
Great job. That's awesome.
Thank you. Now I have to get ready for my check ride before it expires, because it's been a while. There's just been a lot of changes in my life, and sometimes that happens for people too.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite flight that you can remember taking?
I flew to OshKosh, which is in Wisconsin, for that famous flight show. And I went with two fellow pilots. We flew in a Cirrus. It was a little bit faster than the Cessnas I'm used to flying. And it took us, I'd say, 10 hours still to get there. But going and flying into that airport, which becomes, during this week of the air show, it becomes the busiest airport in the world. It was crazy. You had people all around you, had planes ahead of you, behind you, all coming in at the same time. Sometimes the planes weren't that far away from you. And it was a trip, but it was really a great, expansive experience as a pilot. Amazing.
Did you get to land?
Yes. Oh, my gosh. And then when you go down there, they have all these people on the ground, and I've just never seen anything like it. And you see the fields and fields of planes as far as the eye can see, like a sea of them. It was so crazy.
I've seen other people's videos of that, and it's definitely something that I've added to my bucket list for sure.
Yeah, add that for sure.
So is that what you're flying, Cessna, like 172s?
Yes, exactly. And I'd like to get to Cirrus. I like the safety features of it. I like that you have a parachute in the Cirrus, but that's $1 million plane, so again, I'm saving up, or I need my boss to give me a raise.
Do you own your plane now, or do you rent?
No, I rent.
Gotcha. I've thought of buying a plane to complete my training and build my hours, because I understand that it's a more cost-effective way to complete your training, and because I am looking to go to commercial and, I won't be able to do my multi-engine, but at least I'll be able to do my IFR and hour building stuff and whatever I buy. Have you thought of buying a plane? I want to get a Grumman Tiger, and if I don't get that, then I'd like a Piper, and then my third choice is a Cessna, even though you have such beautiful views with a Cessna. But I don't know. I've flown all of those already, and the Moonies are incredible, but the Mooney is a little more advanced, and I want to live.
Yeah. How much is it going to cost you think, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, yeah, I've been doing some research online on like Trade a Plane and some of those online publications where you look for airplanes to buy. And you could really get a really decent IFR training plane for anywhere between $20,000 and $45,000. So like for the price of a halfway decent car, it's not bad.
Yeah, it's a lot more accessible than people think.
It is. The maintenance is something that you have to save up for, like the annual, and when you first buy the plane, I understand, because obviously those prices are for used airplanes. You have to be ready in case, for the surprises that may come up of things that you're going to have to handle.
With the maintenance, yeah.
Because that's really important, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing you don't want to mess around with.
Would you consider buying a plane? Have you thought of it?
Yeah, I have. I've talked to people about it. And, if the right thing came along where someone wanted to share a plane going on it like that, and it was someone I really trusted, obviously, then I'd totally be open to it.
Would you get a Cessna because that's what you're already flying?
I think maybe a Cirrus.
Yeah, those are really nice. That's actually what I flew to Santa Barbara, and Ryman from Proteus had changed out the magnetos on one of his Cirrus aircraft, and he was taking it up to test it out, and he invited me because I lived right there, like 5 minutes from the Santa Monica airport over on Pico and 25th at the time. So he called me and he said, do you want to come over and take a little flight? And 5 minutes later, I was there. You know?
Oh my gosh, that is awesome.
You don't have to tell me twice.
Yeah. And that's kind of the attitude that you got to have too. It's just the yes attitude. Like, okay, I'm doing this. Let's do it, and not let all the negative chatter get into the head. Like, oh, I shouldn't do this. Because I think a lot of pilots aren't practical in terms of how they, because if you were to give yourself reasons why you shouldn't fly, you probably could come up with some.
Absolutely. Yeah, you do. Sometimes I still have to have conversations with myself because it's a big thing to take on. And my husband moved out here with me because I decided I wanted to do this. So, I want to deliver the goods.
Yeah. And you're doing it.
It's been a few months since I've flown now. It's the end of the year. Everybody's busy. And when you do music, there are a lot of gigs and a lot of things to do. So tomorrow's New Year's Eve, so I'll be playing at a local casino for the New Year's Eve festivities. And then after that, I'm going to start working at the Bermuda Dunes Airport, and then I'll be more focused on going ahead and going through with the rest of my training, at least to the private. Because also once you can fly without an instructor, the cost structure changes a lot, which is helpful.
Yeah. That's a good point, too.
Yes. Do you have any advice for aspiring pilots or student pilots?
I'm trying to think what I would say first and foremost. There's so much. I mean, you just got to do it. And the hard work is worth it in the end. It's the most rewarding feeling in the world, getting that certificate and being able to take to the skies. And I think for me, it was a way to work my brain. It was a way to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, to challenge myself in ways I didn't think possible. And once you're able to accomplish something like that, it almost makes anything else seem like a cakewalk. You're like, if I can operate this piece of machinery in the sky, then I can do other things maybe that I didn't think I'd be able to do. So I think my advice would just be a yes person. Just go for it. Don't listen to the negative chatter because you could come up with a million excuses. Just do it.
Yeah, I know I'm my own worst enemy. My husband always says, walking around in your own head is a bad neighborhood. Don't go there.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I had a lot of that. My parents are supportive overall, but they also would say stuff like, or you're going to get hurt, or don't do that, or are you sure you want to do that? And once I did it, they'd be like, okay, we support you. But you'll have a lot of naysayers around who are going to say things that they don't necessarily even have the full information for when they say it. Is that safe? People don't fully grasp or understand something. They're going to have their opinions, and so you can't listen to that.
Totally. You don't need a requirement of a certain amount of knowledge before you're able to give your opinion. People give opinions with no information, with partial information, and whatever combination.
Yeah. And that's the thing. They're giving these strong, hardcore opinions, and they actually don't even know. what they're talking about necessarily. So you have to have confidence in yourself and your own convictions.
Yeah, it's important to consider the source for sure. For me, there are a couple things that really inspired me also to take on learning to fly. One of them is I'm from Puerto Rico, and when Hurricane Maria happened, and my mom is in Puerto Rico, and I couldn't communicate with her in over a week, and I actually hadn't spoken to her in a week on my wedding day, and she lives over there with a bunch of pets, and there's no way she could ever get onto a commercial flight. I thought, if I had to go and help her get out of there, flying would be something that would be very useful at that moment. And another thing is, I'm inspired by people who fly to do like animal rescue, like people who fly in Africa to protect endangered species from poachers, or pilots for paws and stuff like that. Like animals are a cause that's really close to my heart. Do you have any ways that you see that aviation affects the community?
Yeah, there's so many. So you have Angel Flight, you have these pilots who are transporting and bringing sick people to get much needed health care that they could die if they didn't have these pilots who are helping them. You have my dear friend Diane. She's a pilot for this company, and their job is to deliver organs. So when someone dies and then they're an organ donor, that organ has to be transported ASAP. And so she has this whole protocol that she does, but it's fascinating work. And they take the organs and obviously have to transport it with the utmost care to the hospital. They'll land straight on the roof of the hospital and get it to the doctors as soon as possible. But, you have things like that. And then part of the reason why GA airports are so critical is for safety. So Santa Monica Airport, for example, they were fighting different fires. Like when there was a fire in the Bel Air area, they were able to launch from Santa Monica Airport. And a big part of why they fought it and saved more homes is because they had that launching pad. So, when there's an earthquake, planes and pilots are critical. When there's any sort of natural disaster, flying is really important. And then also, like I said, medical reasons and animals and getting animals to homes, helping kids fly. The Young Eagles program, they do incredible work where they take children from, like inner city youth, and they give them the gift of flight. And it's these kids who would never be exposed to something like that or even think it's possible for them to be able to fly. And it changes their world. It really rocks their world. And a lot of them have gone on to become pilots.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm looking to create more and more community over here because, of course, I had the Los Angeles 99s over there and EAA and a few different organizations. So I'm just excited to become more a part of the community over here once I start over at Bermuda Dunes, and also just hopefully finding a way to encourage and inspire and empower more women pilots to come into existence.
Yeah, to come into existence. I love how you said it like that, and I couldn't agree more.
What are some of your favorite experiences about being a pilot now and how it works with you and your everyday life?
Yeah, it makes me a better news reporter when I'm covering a lot of these plane incidents that we cover, knowing what I'm talking about, knowing the questions to ask, understanding how aviation and aerodynamics work. It's all super helpful. Also, I think, I hate to say this, but there's a level of street cred where it's like, okay, you took the time to do that or you're able to do that. It's almost like I've noticed some of my counterparts taking me more seriously. And, that I don't want to just be, no disrespect to, like, people who do entertainment. Entertainment's great or important, but I'm not necessarily pigeonholed into something like that, like what people would think of as being the female role. if that makes sense.
I think it's really important. I actually saw an AOPA Live segment where they were talking about this reporter who didn't know anything about aviation, and she was on the scene for like some small accident or incident that had happened somewhere. I don't remember where, but I remember that she asked like probably one of the pilots that was hanging around in the hangar at the time, and he told her something which she reported, which was that the problem was caused by a failure in the flux capacitor of the airplane.
Oh, I saw that.
See, that would never happen to you.
Yeah. Yeah, that was bad. I think someone was messing with her.
Yeah, it was bad and hilarious, but yeah, it should be more about educating people, not about taking advantage of people. Because what you did getting your private, it's hard. It's hard work. It's the knowledge and the practical parts none of it is a cakewalk. So it shouldn't be an opportunity to make fun of people who haven't done that. It should be an opportunity to help educate people.
Right. And I think that's important to remember, because a lot of pilots will be really frustrated with reporters or people in general who don't understand aviation, and so that's probably where this come from. He wanted to like stick it to the media, and that's how he did it. But it doesn't really serve us in the long run as pilots, because you want to educate the public.
Correct. My husband's always reminding me when I talk to people, because I'm like, because this CFI and that FBO, and he's like, babe, people don't know what that is. You know?
Yeah, that's funny. Cops do the same thing when they're talking. They could have a whole paragraph. The military as well. They could have a whole paragraph and abbreviations for words, or like with this different things like that. And I always find it hilarious. I'm always like, wait, what are you talking about?
Yeah, pilots love their abbreviations for sure. Okay, let me ask you, is there something that you want to leave the listeners with before we say goodbye and I let you go on with the rest of your awesome day?
Well, first off, if I sounded a little bit tired, I've been up since 2 a.m. for work, so forgive me. But I really appreciate what you're doing. I think it's so important for female pilots to have a voice and to hopefully inspire even one woman to fly, or really anyone to fly who's been thinking about it. We need more pilots, and saving our airports right now is more important than ever. I just hope that people see the value that our local airports play and our pilots play. It's so much more than meets the eye in terms of public safety and a whole list of other things. So, yeah, and I'm grateful to be a pilot. And they say once you get your license, it's your license to learn. It's just really the beginning of the journey. So that's part of the fun too, is thinking about the possibilities of where you can fly and what you can learn and how you can grow as a pilot and person as you continue that journey.
Absolutely. That's excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on, and I really appreciate it. I'm sure the listeners are going to really enjoy the conversation and all the stories and stuff that you shared. So thank you so much, Christina, and I send you a big hug and congratulations. Oh, you know what? I wanted to ask you really quick. I forgot to ask you this earlier. What does your fiance think about your flying?
He is supportive. He's flown with me, and he actually wanted to learn to fly. And so after he flew with me, I got him a lesson, which he hasn't done yet. But he's amazing all around. He's just very supportive and believes in empowering women and me as his partner, which is a good thing, I would say. And so hopefully I'll get him in a plane with me again, with him as the actual co-pilot one day.
That would be amazing. I told my husband if if I ever become a CFI, he can be my first student.
That would be the coolest.
I think so. I think that would be fun. And, I've always wanted to do like a flight from here to Argentina or something like that. My husband's from Argentina, so.
Oh, he is. Very cool.
Just look forward to being able to have lots of adventures together.
Yeah. And then something you can, transfer to your family, and you never know the impact that you're going to have on someone. Maybe even if it's not inspiring someone to fly, maybe it's inspiring them to face their fear in some way or to overcome something that they have been thinking about doing, but for whatever reason, we're too scared to approach yet.
Absolutely. Facing your fears, that's where freedom lies.
Yes. Amen, sister.
All right, girl. Thank you. Thank you again so much. I really appreciate you doing this, and I'm excited that you fit me into your insane schedule, and I hope you can go home and get some sleep now.
Yes, I am. I'm doing that exactly as we speak. I think I'm going to just crawl into a hole.
And that concludes the conversation that I got to have with Christina Pascucci. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here at Chicks Who Fly. We really enjoy doing this podcast for you. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider following us on Spotify and subscribing on YouTube, as well as sharing with all your friends who might enjoy this podcast as well. Also, if you would like to be more intimately involved with the creation of this podcast, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon at Chicks Who Fly. You can reach us at chickswhoflyofficial@gmail.com and on our website, chickswhofly.com. Thank you so much once again, and we look forward to spending some more time with you on the next episode of Chicks Who Fly.